All right, let's talk about one of the biggest questions in Indian politics. Who really decides who becomes prime minister? I'll give you a little hint. It's probably not who you think it is. Let's dive in.
So who is it, you might think? Well, it's the voters, right? Or maybe the most popular leader. The media definitely has a say, or do they? You see, we're told it's one of these things. But the truth? The real decider is something totally different.
Yeah, it's not who you think. The power doesn't really lie with one person or a single party, or even directly with us, the voters. The real decision gets made by these powerful, almost invisible forces that only show up after all the votes have been counted. And this is exactly why predicting Indian elections is just so incredibly difficult, right? I mean, we've all seen this happen. The person everyone expects to win suddenly hits a wall. Some surprise candidate pops up out of nowhere, and all those confident predictions just collapse. But here's the thing. It's not that the experts are clueless. It's that they're often looking at the wrong stuff. You know, the classic mistake is to get caught up in the faces, the big personalities, the popularity contests, all the noise from the rallies and the slogans. But the real secret? It's to ignore the faces and focus on the forces. And by forces, I mean the underlying structures, the cold, hard math of post-election alliances, and the very specific political conditions that an election creates. That's where the real power actually is.
Okay, so let's really break this down. The key idea here is that choosing a prime minister isn't just a one-shot deal. It's actually a two-step process. And everything, I mean everything, is driven by these conditions.
So here's how it works. Step 1, we all vote, the election happens. But, and this is the important part, the election doesn't directly pick the leader. What it does is create a unique set of political conditions. Then comes step 2. Those very conditions are what decide what kind of leader is needed. They are what determine who ultimately gets the top job.
So you're probably asking, what exactly are these conditions? Well, a great way to think about it is like the political weather report after the election storm has passed. It's a mix of a few key things. The final seat counts, obviously, the nitty-gritty of coalition arithmetic, the general mood of the country, and this really interesting idea called institutional comfort, which is basically how, well, comfortable the system feels with a particular person in charge.
Okay, this framework really comes to life when you apply it to different election outcomes. So let's do that. Let's walk through 4 possible scenarios and see how each one creates the perfect conditions for a totally different kind of leader.
Okay, scenario number 1. This is the most straightforward one. A single party wins a clean, decisive majority. You can think of this as a mandate election.
In a situation like this, it's like the voters have just handed one party the keys to the car and said, "You're in charge, go." Coalition partners? They're totally irrelevant. So the conditions here reward a leader who is dominant, assertive, someone with a very clear ideology. There's no need to compromise, so the system naturally elevates a commander, a strongman.
All right, on to outcome number 2. And this is where things start to get a little bit trickier. So one party is the biggest, but they don't have enough seats on their own. They need allies to form a majority. This kicks off what we can call a management election. And trust me, the whole dynamic just flips on its head.
Because all of a sudden, those smaller allies have real leverage, real power. The markets might get a little shaky. So in these conditions, the system isn't looking for a commander anymore. No, it rewards a stabilizer. It wants someone who is great at managing a coalition, someone who can calm everyone down and reduce anxiety. Being loud and assertive, that's not a strength here, it's a liability.
And now for outcome number 3, where things get really messy. A hung parliament. This means nobody, no single party, no pre-existing alliance has a majority. This situation triggers what's known as a settlement election.
In this kind of environment, being a dominant personality is completely useless. It's all about survival. Leadership isn't about inspiring the masses. It's about something much more practical. Who is acceptable to the largest number of different competing groups? The system starts looking for a consensus builder, an anchor, someone who is tolerated by many, even if they aren't necessarily loved by anyone.
Okay, our final scenario, number 4. And this one is interesting because it's less about the hard numbers and much more about the national mood. Just imagine a situation where the country is just plain tired, exhausted by years of strong personality-driven politics. This creates the perfect conditions for a transition election.
So in this case, the national mood is the most important condition. People just want calm, they want predictability, and so the system rewards a different kind of leader.
A more technocratic type, someone who can lower the political temperature, who makes the institutions feel safe. It's a search for a reassuring figure, not another big personality.
So, when you look at these four very different outcomes, the main takeaway becomes crystal clear. The whole idea of one best leader who is right for all seasons, it's a myth. The right leader is always, always a product of the specific conditions that the election happens to create.
And this really gets us to a deeper truth about how power actually works in India. You see, underneath all the shouting, all the drama of an election campaign, the political system itself is quietly asking one very, very pragmatic question.
And that question is this: who can run this country without shaking it every morning? When the results are messy, when the system is under stress, this is what it all boils down to. It becomes a search for stability, not more disruption.
And isn't that fascinating? It reveals this quiet truth about Indian politics. For all the chaos we see on the surface, the system itself has this deep, almost primal instinct for caution. When things get really tense, it has a way of pulling back from the brink and searching for balance.
So if there is just one thing you take away from all of this, let it be this rule. Write it down. Democracies don't choose leaders. They create conditions. And it is always the conditions that end up deciding the leader. So, now that you know the rule, now that you have this framework, I have one last question for you. The next time you're watching an election unfold, what are you going to be paying attention to? The faces or the forces?